that authors had to pay for their own copies of their book unless their advance had been earned out. I suggest that Penguin make efforts to sell more copies of They to cover this deficit, Dick suggested in her peevish reply. K. Dick Papers, the University of Texas at Austin, Harry Ransom Humanities Research Center. She was not satisfied with Penguin's sales or publicity efforts. It seemed to her that nobody at the house was committed to the book, and Dick was correct in her own way. No one was quite ready for They. Not the house that published it, not the readers who ignored it, not the literary critics whose reactions were middling to unbelievably sexist, including, perhaps most notably, the male reviewer in the Sunday Times who described it as a fantasy sprouting from some collective menopausal spasm in the national unconsciousness. 2 years after publication, They was out of print. After her death in 2001, Dick's literary executors approached numerous publishers, but all declined the opportunity to republish her work. When it was finally rediscovered, a chance encounter in which a literary agent happened to pick it up in a charity shop, it was impossible to order a used copy on the internet. My own is less a book and more a sheaf of frail pages held together by a memory of a spine. The rediscovery of They is a happy ending, of course, but a happy ending to a sad story that holds its own metafictional reminder about the loftiness of creation humbled by the realities of the world, the clash of art and commerce. Artists do not have to be blinded or burned to be silenced. Their suppression can be as simple as creating or maintaining economic precariousness and allowing books to fade away. In an essay in the Paris Review, critic Lucy Scholes writes about the whiplash of encountering They after the rest of Dick's work. Reading it was like reading the work of an entirely different writer, she says, describing it as a complete anomaly in Dick's oeuvre, a surreptitious late-career aberration whose genesis is unclear and which does not seep into what she writes after. The observation recalls one of H.P. Lovecraft's, in which he argues that there is no better evidence of the pervasive human dread that energizes the literature of cosmic fear than the impulse which now and then drives writers of totally opposite leanings to try their hands at it in isolated tales, as if to discharge from their minds certain phantasmal shapes which would otherwise haunt them. What haunted K. Dick? Financial precariousness? Frustrations with the creative process? She died in 2001, a mere month after a terrorist attack set off one of our many current parallel dystopias, but one can imagine that she would be just as troubled by many features of our contemporary lives. The economic violence, eternal wars, the flirtations with authoritarianism, the ongoing environmental catastrophe. It is tempting to play the allegory game with They, the way we have incorporated the world-building of The Handmaid's Tale or The Hunger Games into the zeitgeist. Metaphors are easily abused. You have likely heard your ideological opposite invoke 1984 in their own defence, making, you are sure, the opposite point the author himself was making. And it is easy, and not wrong, to be clear, to affix the label of They onto the people who have specifically made the lives of artists and intellectuals hell, conservative politicians and reactionary pundits, and pearl-clutching parents and cowardly institutions. This creates a top-down vision of dystopia in which blame exists elsewhere, outside. But I don't think K. Dick would let us off that easy. Censorious impulses and exasperatingly misguided discourse and soft bigotry are hardly the exclusive property of the right. The radical queer author of They had to be rediscovered by the whole world, after all. If your understanding of dystopia does not begin, first, with your own complicity, the way that you are They, even if you don't want to be, you have missed the point. The thing about dystopia is you can bring it to a knife fight, but you'd better not drop it, otherwise you might find yourself at the wrong end of the blade. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. Once-in-a-lifetime weather events pass over us regularly. I have forgotten how seasons used to move. People who do not have to suffer and die, not because of a lack of resources, but because of a lack of political will. Art is strangled. Capitalism, commerce, governments, institutions, bigots, scolds, cowards. In this context, They feels nearly paralysing. What is to be done in the face of this loss, evil, calamity? K. Dick tells us. Or, at least, she gives us an opening, a small and meaningful door. Jane, the poet, the one who had her right arm held over the flames for 8 minutes for resisting the loss of her work. She tells the narrator.